Right, the Biden administration announced on Friday that they will lift the Title 42 restrictions that have enabled the Border Patrol to turn back illegal immigrants at the southern border. The change will be effective May 23rd. As a result, 3 states, Arizona, Missouri, and Louisiana, have already filed a lawsuit to stop President Biden from ending the public health order. The policy was originally implemented by the Trump administration in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and has remained partially in place. The lawsuit argues ending Title 42 was done unlawfully and will have devastating impacts upon various states. Joining me now to discuss this lawsuit and the many consequences if Title 42 is rescinded is Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich. General, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony, once again for having me.
All right, the lifting of this that they're proposing to take place, or they're saying is going to take place on May 23rd, is all but inviting a self-inflicted crisis at the border on top of what already is taking place.
Yeah, Tony, it is essentially throwing gasoline on a fire. The reality is that not only Arizona and other border states are feeling this impact, we know that there's a record amount of fentanyl and methamphetamine flowing into our country. And the cartels make money not only off those drugs, but off people being smuggled across here. And it is estimated that if Title 42 is rescinded, more than 500,000 people, in addition to the people already illegally crossing, will cross into this country illegally. I mean, that's literally like the population of Kansas City, Missouri, or Baltimore, Maryland, coming across in 1 month. I mean, it is overwhelming, the social systems. It's quite frankly making our country more dangerous, and it's just unfair to hardworking American taxpayers.
General, Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security has acknowledged that there will be an increase of those coming across the border illegally, trying to cross the border, and they're calling for a whole of government response. But haven't we heard that before?
Yeah, the whole of government response for the Biden administration is essentially not only to abolish ICE, but to abolish our southern border. I mean, it is a catastrophe. We know we've seen a record amount of people, more than 2 million just in the last year. We're seeing a record amount of gotaways. We know people from the terror watch list have been apprehended. We just won a case about a week and a half ago in federal court trying to force the Biden administration to deport people, deportation orders. There's more than 1 million people with deportation orders, Tony. And what's happening now is people charged with serious crimes, convicted of serious crimes, are just being released into our community. It's making all of our lives more dangerous. I mean, literally, the Democratic Party has gotten so left. We've gone in 50 years from John F. Kennedy wanting to put a man on the moon to Joe Biden wanting to put a felon in everyone's neighborhood.
The reality is Title 42 was a pandemic response because of the coronavirus and trying to restrict the flow across the border. But it was an effective tool to cut down on this massive flow of illegal immigrants across the border. The changing of this is in keeping with what this administration has pursued in terms of their immigration policy. This just allows the floodgates to open, if I'm looking at it correctly.
Yeah, Tony, it's been estimated that the Title 42 was used more than 1.7 million times. So, we're talking about essentially doubling the amount of people that are legally entering the country. And, once again, this is not a humane policy, it's an insane policy. And what the Biden administration doing is, quite frankly, undermining the rule of law. And that's why so many immigrants want to come here, is because America is all about the rule of law, and they're undermining it. And so he is essentially decriminalized by not having any consequences with illegal immigration and not deporting people, deportation orders. And now he's essentially incentivizing. And whether that's through welfare benefits or whether that's essentially saying that there's going to be nothing to stop you, we will see more people break the law and illegally enter our country. The cartels are going to make more money, and more Americans are going to die as a result of these failed border policies.
Now, that's their overall border policy. It is a violation of the rule of law. But in particular, the government operates by procedures, so that when they change rules like this, there's a process by which it is changed. I think in your lawsuit, you argue that they're going about it in an unlawful manner.
Yeah, it's a very similar argument to the one I made at the Supreme Court, a month and a half ago, that if the Biden administration wants to change a policy, they have to follow the law and the Administrative Procedures Act in doing so. I mean, after all, he's not a king, he's not a dictator, and it's one of the reasons why I also sued him over, I think last time we talked about his unconstitutional vaccine mandate. So the president and the progressive left, I mean, they are essentially trying to socialize the economy and centralize power in Washington, D.C. And I think part of that strategy, Tony, is to overwhelm the system and to have a bunch of people whose first act in coming to the United States is something illegal, and then essentially make them dependent on a central authority. And so, whether one disagrees or agrees with immigration policy, at the end of the day, the rule of law has to mean something. And that means that even the president of the United States has to do things the legal and right way.
So, General Brnovich, let me ask you this. According to the CDC and the Biden administration, the pandemic is over at the border, and so people can cross freely, illegally into the country. But yet, here as Americans, we're still forced to wear masks when we fly. They're still forcing members of our military to get a vaccination against their will, or they're being pushed out of the military. How can they have it both ways?
Well, the progressive left, the neo-Marxists, it's not about intellectual consistency. There is a lot of hypocrisy, and that is because for the left, for the far left, for the neo-Marxists, the ends justifies the means. And so this is all an attempt that we've seen this from the left for years now, trying to undermine families, trying to undermine law enforcement, trying to undermine our religious institutions. And now they are trying to overwhelm the system and make more and more people dependent on the federal government. And when you talk about, vaccine mandates and you talk about mask mandates, to me, that's all about essentially having people become dependent on the federal government to let them know when it's safe and not safe. And the reality is
Right.
that a lot of what the Biden administration was doing was unconstitutional. And it really is a sad irony that one of the only tools working to stop even more illegal immigration is now going to be tossed aside by the Biden administration.
Yeah, it is amazing, that double standard. General Brnovich, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us here on Washington Watch today.